Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're looking into a story that's genuinely unsettling. It's a real-life mystery that even decades later just leaves you with way more questions than answers. We're going to tell you the story of Blair Adams. It's a case full of baffling choices, deep, unexplained fear, and ultimately a really tragic end, very far from home. I mean, just try to picture this. I mean, someone suddenly feels this intense, unseen terror. They drop everything, abandon their life, make these hurried, strange plans, and then they wind up murdered brutally with thousands of dollars just scattered around their body, untouched. That's the reality, chilling reality of Blair Adams. He was a 31-year-old Canadian, and his last days were this frantic, desperate flight into the unknown.
Yeah, what makes Blair's story so uniquely baffling is how every single step he took, every decision he made in those final days, it just seems to make the mystery deeper. It doesn't offer any clarity at all. His actions were, and this isn't an exaggeration, incredibly erratic. They seemed driven by this intense, all-consuming fear. It's one of those cases that really makes you question everything you think you know about motive and circumstance.
Okay, so let's try to unpack this a bit. Blair Adams. By most accounts, he was, a pretty cheerful guy, fun-loving, friendly. He worked as a construction foreman up in Surrey, British Columbia. People said he was a hard worker, liked his job. But then in the weeks leading up to July 1996, that kind of bright demeanor, it started to fade. It started to unravel. His mother, Sandra Edwards, she definitely noticed a big shift, a dramatic one. Blair started having these severe mood swings. He got irritable, short-tempered, seemed really anxious, wasn't sleeping well either. And when she tried to ask him, what's wrong, his answer was just chillingly vague, secretive. He said, "I don't think I should tell you about it." Just like that. No explanation for why he was so scared or, why he couldn't even tell his own mother.
Right. And that abrupt change in personality, that's a really critical early sign here. It points to something profound going on inside him, like either some overwhelming threat from outside or maybe the start of a really severe internal crisis. And the fact he wouldn't tell his mother, someone he was clearly close to, that really highlights how deep this terror must have felt. Whatever it was, it felt too dangerous even to share.
So the situation escalates pretty quickly. It starts looking like a really desperate escape plan. On Friday, July 5th, 1996, Blair's behavior gets even more concerning. He starts pulling out large amounts of cash, like over $6,000 from his savings account. And he also takes out thousands more in jewelry. He's basically liquidating his assets, right, and making himself mobile, financially untraceable.
Exactly.
Then, just 2 days later, that Sunday, he tried to get into the United States.
Okay.
But, he gets denied entry by the border officials. Apparently, he fit a certain profile.
Yeah.
A young guy, single, traveling alone with lots of cash and valuables. That often flags people for potential drug trafficking. Mm-hmm. So they turn him back. But even that didn't stop him. His commitment to disappearing, it didn't waver at all. Back in Canada, he immediately quits his job, collects his final paycheck. Done.
And this is where you really see that shift, from just being afraid to actively running. Getting turned away at the border, it was a setback, sure, but it didn't stop him. If anything, it seemed to speed up his plans, quitting his job right away, cutting those professional ties. It really points to someone trying to become completely untraceable, almost like he was trying to shed his old identity. It also makes you wonder, though, was he maybe carrying something else, something that wasn't just cash or jewelry that might have contributed to him being flagged? The sources don't say, but it's something investigators would have looked at.
Yeah, good point. And then later that exact same afternoon, Sunday, he does something else that's just truly bizarre. He spends $1,600 on a round-trip airline ticket to Frankfurt, Germany. Now, okay, his girlfriend lived there. He'd met her the year before when he was working near Frankfurt.
Oh.
But here's the weird part. She wasn't expecting him at all. She had absolutely no idea about any of this stuff that was happening. It was like a trip to see someone he cared about, but totally unplanned, totally unannounced from his side.
And there's another layer here, too. While his girlfriend described him as, loving, a former coworker apparently had a very different impression. Called him abrasive and confrontational, said he even got into fights sometimes, which is such a stark contrast to the usual cheerful image his family and friends had.
Right, so you've got these conflicting pictures of him.
Exactly. The loving boyfriend versus the confrontational coworker. Could be just two sides of the same person, sure. Or maybe it hints at different parts of his life that Blair kept separate. And if you connect that back, Blair had apparently mentioned before that he was scared of some coworkers coming back from Germany. He thought they wanted to hurt him. So that plane ticket to Germany, even though he never used it, suddenly feels different. Could it have been an attempt to flee something specific from his time over there, maybe related to that abrasive side or his work?
That's a really good point. And this is where it gets even stranger, honestly, because Blair doesn't actually go to Germany. Buying that ticket turns out it was just another weird, almost impulsive step in this frantic, completely illogical journey he was on. So the very next day, Monday, Blair goes and turns in the Germany tickets, gets his money back, presumably. Instead, he rents a car. And this time, he successfully drives into the United States. First stop, Seattle. In Seattle, he buys another plane ticket. This one's one way. To Washington, D.C. Investigators later found this really perplexing because, a round-trip ticket would have been a lot cheaper. It strongly suggested he had zero intention of ever coming back, not to Canada, maybe not even back from D.C. itself. So early Wednesday morning, Blair lands in D.C., but he doesn't stay there. He keeps going, traveling overland now to Knoxville, Tennessee. And this is maybe the most baffling detail for everyone. His family, investigators, everyone. Blair had absolutely no known connections in Tennessee. No friends, no family, no work history, nothing. Zero. So why Knoxville? It remains a complete, total mystery.
Yeah, that jump from Germany to D.C. and then specifically Knoxville, that's highly significant. It feels like either a last-minute change of plans, maybe because the threat evolved, or perhaps just a sudden, almost random decision driven purely by panic. I mean, for someone supposedly running from a known danger, picking a place totally off the grid where you have no ties, you could see that as a survival tactic, right? A place no one would think to look for you. But it also creates huge problems for investigators trying to figure out his path and why he was killed there. Without any connection, the why Knoxville question just hangs there, agonizingly out of reach.
So Blair gets to Knoxville. The first sightings are around 5:30 p.m. at a gas station. He tells the attendant his rental car won't start. The attendant checks it out, pretty quickly realizes Blair has the wrong keys for the car. So they look around for the right keys, check around the station, peer through the car windows. Nothing. The attendant suggests, reasonably, hey, check your pockets. But Blair absolutely refuses, adamantly, almost defiantly. Like, what was he hiding? Why wouldn't he check? Anyway, the rental car company's closed for the day, so he's stranded there till morning.
Strange.
Yeah. So Blair manages to hitch a ride to a nearby motel. An employee there later described him as, quote, paranoid, very nervous, and agitated. Said he was constantly acting like he was expecting someone to come in on him. They had surveillance cameras, and they caught him going in and out of the lobby 5 times in just an hour, pacing, checking, before he finally paid for a room. But then get this, after checking in at 7:37 p.m., he takes the room key, puts it in his pocket, walks out the front door of the motel, and just never goes back to the room. Never used it.
Wow. Okay. So you have this consistent pattern now, right? Escalating paranoia, seen by multiple people who don't know each other. It really paints this picture of a man not just running from a place, but from this profound threat, whether it was real in the outside world or inside his own head, refusing to check his pockets for the keys, constantly checking the lobby, then paying for a room and immediately abandoning it. These aren't the actions of someone thinking clearly or rationally. It's not just fear anymore. It feels like deep, maybe even pathological terror. And that car key detail stands out, doesn't it? Was he hiding it on purpose? Did he think the keys themselves were dangerous, or that showing them would expose him somehow? It adds this layer of desperate but maybe profoundly confused calculation on top of the fear.
And just hours after leaving that motel lobby, that was the last time anyone saw Blair Adams alive. About 12 hours later, Blair Adams' body was found. It was in a parking lot, maybe half a mile from that motel. The scene was, well, horrifying and deeply strange. Blair was naked from the waist down. His shoes were off. His socks were turned inside out. And his shirt had been ripped open.
Just bizarre details.
Totally bizarre. But here's the part that just blows your mind. Scattered all around his body was nearly $4,000 in cash. Mixed currencies. American, Canadian, German. Right next to him, there was a little sack. Inside. His gold and jewelry, worth probably another $2,000. All of it just lying there, untouched. And then another baffling detail. The key to his rental car, the one he claimed was lost back at the gas station, it was found right there beside him.
Okay, so that crime scene, it presents this huge contradiction right off the bat. Robbery is completely off the table as a motive. Thousands in cash, valuable jewelry, all just left behind. It points so strongly towards a deeply personal attack. Yet without a clear attacker or any understandable reason, the why just remains agonizingly elusive. And the car key being there, the one he seemed to be hiding just hours before, that adds another layer. Was it calculated deception on his part earlier, or just profound confusion in his final hours? It makes you wonder if that key was somehow important to whatever happened next, or maybe important to the secret he was keeping.
The autopsy report, it showed a lot of cuts, abrasions, clear signs he fought back hard, but the actual cause of death was a single violent blow to his abdomen. It ruptured his stomach. Awful. He also had a slice on his forehead, likely from a weapon like a club or maybe a crowbar, and his hands were badly beaten up, bloodied, showing he really did put up a fight.
A defensive struggle.
Yeah. And clenched in his fist, investigators found one single long strand of hair, someone else's hair. That was basically the only significant piece of physical evidence they found at the scene itself. The report also noted injuries suggesting he'd been sexually assaulted, though no DNA evidence was recovered back then, and they weren't sure about the timing, whether it happened before, during, or after the killing blows. There was also a security guard from a nearby business who claimed he heard a scream around 3:30 that morning. An abrupt scream, he said. He thought it sounded like a woman's voice.
Right, the sexual assault element, combined with the extreme violence and the fact the valuables were untouched, it makes this case incredibly hard to classify. It just doesn't fit neatly into any standard criminal profile, you know? That single hair clutched in his hand, it's powerful but also so frustrating. It tells us he fought back, maybe even grabbed his attacker. But without a match in any database, it's just a silent witness. And the scream the guard heard, if that was Blair or maybe someone else involved, it just adds another layer of terrifying ambiguity to those final moments.
So what does it all mean? I mean, Blair's family, the investigators, they're still completely puzzled, even today. Why Knoxville? That's the big one.
Yeah.
He had ties in Canada, sure, Germany maybe, but nothing, absolutely nothing in Tennessee. It was truly off the grid for his entire life. He was so clearly running from something or someone, undeniably terrified, refused to tell anyone what was going on. And yet he ends up brutally murdered under these incredibly suspicious circumstances in a place he seemingly had no earthly reason to be. Was just some horrible random coincidence? Or did whatever he was running from actually manage to find him thousands of miles away in Knoxville?
So core question, isn't it?
Let's get into the theories that have been floated around, because this is where the mystery really deepens and the contradictions just pile up. Okay, theory one, maybe a sex act gone wrong. I mean, the injuries did indicate sexual assault, as we mentioned, but how does that square with nearly $4,000 in cash and all that jewelry just being left right there?
Yeah, that's the central problem with that theory, isn't it? It makes it really problematic as the main explanation. If the encounter was purely about sex, why leave the money? It's perplexing. Even if things escalated violently from, say, a consensual encounter gone bad, you'd almost expect an opportunistic perpetrator to grab the valuables on their way out. The fact that they were left untouched really points away from typical robbery or even a standard crime of passion. It suggests the motive wasn't financial, it was something deeply personal, or maybe something far more random and bizarre, where the killer simply wasn't interested in the money for some reason.
Right. Okay, then there's the theory about a mental break. That Blair's intense paranoia wasn't about an external threat, but an internal battle. Maybe some kind of undiagnosed mental health crisis that led him, tragically, to be in the wrong place at the wrong time in Knoxville. His family did confirm there was some history of mental illness in the family line, but Blair himself had never been diagnosed with anything. And remember, despite having a history of substance abuse years earlier, there were no drugs or alcohol found in his system. His family said he'd been clean for 2 years. So what are the challenges with that theory? Why might investigators lean away from it or towards it?
Well, it's incredibly difficult to assess after the fact, right? And it's a theory that often comes up when you see behavior this erratic. His actions certainly look like severe paranoia, but without a formal diagnosis beforehand or some clear clinical trigger we know about, saying it was just a mental break is purely speculative. And the fact that he managed to navigate this complex cross-country journey, even while agitated, kind of complicates a simple break narrative. He was functional enough to travel, just deeply distressed. Plus, the lack of drugs or alcohol takes away an easy explanation for his state. So investigators would definitely consider it. But they'd also have to ask, was this a totally uncharacteristic mental episode out of nowhere? Or was there an external reason for his fear that just looked like a mental health crisis? The evidence is just too ambiguous. It keeps the theory on the table, but it's far from conclusive.
Which leads us to the third theory, the most chilling one, really. The one Blair himself seemed to believe. That he was right all along, that whatever or whoever he was so terrified of it did get him. He ran, he tried to hide, he tried to disappear off the map, and somehow they found him anyway. But how? I mean, how on earth did they know he ended up in Knoxville, Tennessee, of all places? That remains the biggest, most unsettling question mark in this whole thing.
It really does. If his fears were real, how did someone track him thousands of miles to this obscure location where he knew absolutely no one? The logistics of that. It suggests either a really sophisticated network tracking him, maybe professional involvement, or just an almost unbelievable, terrifying stroke of bad luck, like they stumbled upon him. And again, the money being left behind is key. It makes this so different from most violent crime. It points away from common motives. If it was a targeted hit, the motive wasn't money. It feels more like a punishment or maybe silencing him or just an act of pure malice. But that lack of any concrete link between Blair and Knoxville, that's what makes this theory so hauntingly persistent, yet still completely unproven. It just circles back to why Knoxville?
Investigators, they've pretty much exhausted their leads in the Blair Adams case. It's been over 28 years now since he died. And sadly, the chances of a break in the case, they get slimmer every day that passes. His death and all the bizarre circumstances around it. It seems destined to remain one of the most perplexing, truly unsolved mysteries of our time.
Yeah, the enduring mystery of Blair Adams, it really forces you to confront this idea that sometimes, even when you have compelling clues, the story just refuses to come together. His story is such a powerful reminder of how quickly a life can just unravel into this inexplicable tragedy, leaving behind only fear and these giant, unanswered questions. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? If you were Blair, in his shoes, what could you possibly have done differently?
What part of Blair Adams' story stands out most to you? What do you think really happened to him in those frantic final days? It's the kind of chilling story that really sticks with you long after you've heard it. If you're drawn to these kinds of unsettling mysteries, these true crime stories, please do remember to like, share, and subscribe to our channel, Horror Docs. And we do more deep dives like this into the shadows of the unknown. We'll be back soon with another story to unravel. Thank you so much for listening.